The morning air in October 1932 doesn't just feel cold, it feels heavy. It is a thick, soot-stained fog that rolls off the Detroit River and settles into the lungs of the thousands of men standing outside the iron gates of the River Rouge plant. You are one of the lucky ones. You have a badge. You have a station. For now, you have a life. But as you walk past the relief line, a mile-long snaking queue of men in tattered wool coats staring at the ground, you realize that your employment isn't a status, it's a temporary reprieve. In 1929, the average manufacturing wage was about 55 cents an hour. Today, you'll be lucky to clear 30 cents, and that's if the foreman doesn't adjust your hours at the end of the shift. The factory floor is a cathedral of cold steel and deafening percussion. As you step inside, the temperature jumps 20 degrees, but it isn't a comfortable heat. It is the dry, searing breath of the blast furnaces and the friction of 1,000 moving belts. You head to your station at the stamping press, a 20-foot-tall monster of cast iron that exerts over 500 tons of pressure to turn flat sheets of steel into the fenders of a car that fewer and fewer Americans can actually afford to buy. You check the lubrication levels on the main crankshaft. This isn't poetry, it's survival. In 1932, safety regulations are essentially non-existent. There are no light curtains to stop the press if your hand stays in the die a fraction of a second too long. There are no ergonomic mats. There is only the rhythm. The press cycles every 6 seconds. In those 6 seconds, you must clear the scrap, seat the new blank, and retract your arms. If you miss the rhythm, the machine doesn't care. It will stamp the steel just as easily as it will stamp through bone. The sound is a constant physical assault. It is a 100-decibel roar that vibrates the marrow in your teeth. This is the industrial reality of the Great Depression that the textbooks often gloss over, the sheer grinding mechanical tax on the human body. By 10 a.m., the back of your neck is coated in a mixture of sweat and industrial coolant. You look at the man at the station next to you, Bill. He's 60 years old, which in this factory makes him an ancient relic. His hands move with a mechanical twitch, a symptom of the shakes brought on by years of lead exposure and repetitive motion. If the floor manager sees him stumble once, Bill will be at the back of the relief line by noon. There is no pension. There is no severance. There is only the gate. Let's look at the math of your life right now. A gallon of milk costs 18 cents. A loaf of bread is 7 cents. A pound of steak is 23 cents. It sounds cheap until you realize that after paying the $15 a month rent for your cramped tenement, you are left with less than $4 a week to feed a family of 4. You think about this as you watch the massive overhead cranes move 3-ton coils of steel above your head. Every link in those chains is a potential point of failure. Every squeak in the pulley system is a warning. The engineering of this era was magnificent and terrifying. The machines were built to last forever, but the men were considered replaceable parts. You notice a slight change in the pitch of your press, a high-pitched metallic whine underneath the rhythmic thud. To an untrained ear, it's nothing. To you, it's the sound of a bearing about to seize. You have two choices. Tell the foreman and risk him shutting down the line, which means everyone on this floor loses their pay for the afternoon, or keep feeding the monster and hope it holds until the 6 p.m. whistle. You look toward the elevated walkway where the floor manager stands with a clipboard. He isn't looking for quality, he's looking for the stretch out. This is the common practice of increasing the machine speed every hour to see how much more a man can produce before he breaks. In 1920, a worker might handle 2 looms or 2 presses. Now, in the depths of the Depression, they are forcing you to handle 4. It is a psychological war of attrition. They know you won't quit. Where would you go? There are 12 million unemployed men in America right now. Every time you blink, you see the faces of the men outside the gate. They are the reserve army of labor, and they are the reason the foreman can treat you like a cog. The floor is slick with oil and metal shavings. You move to adjust the tension on the drive belt. As you lean in, you feel the static electricity from the spinning leather. If that belt snaps, it becomes a whip that can decapitate a man in a heartbeat. You keep your head down. You focus on the technical specs of the job. The steel you are stamping is cold-rolled 18-gauge. It's tough, unforgiving. You have to seat it perfectly against the back gauge or the piece will buckle, wasting 30 cents of material, an amount higher than your hourly wage. You feel a cramp in your left calf, but you don't dare stretch it. Movement that isn't productive is movement that is noticed. The economy of the factory is a zero-sum game. The coal smoke from the furnaces outside begins to seep through the clerestory windows, turning the shafts of sunlight into a grimy yellow haze. This is the heart of the American machine, and right now it is coughing on its own exhaust. You reach for the next sheet of steel. Your hands are cracked, the grease worked so deep into the skin that soap no longer reaches it. Suddenly, the line stutters. The massive drive shaft overhead slows for a second, then groans. The men all freeze, their hands hovering over their machines. For a brief, terrifying moment, the roar drops by half. In the silence, you can hear the wind whistling through the gaps in the factory walls. This is the fear that keeps you awake at night. Not the machine breaking, but the machine stopping. Because when the machines stop, the world ends. The floor manager's whistle pierces the sudden silence, a sharp metallic sound that cuts through the dying hum of the overhead shafts. He doesn't offer a word of comfort. He just points at the main drive housing. The silence is the most expensive thing in Detroit. Every minute this line is down, the company loses hundreds of dollars in lost productivity. But for you, the cost is much more personal. In 1932, many factories operated on a no-work, no-pay basis, down to the very minute. If the line doesn't move, your children don't eat tonight. You and two other men scrambled toward the main assembly. This is where the angle B of your reality becomes a mechanical nightmare. The drive system is a relic of 19th century engineering, a complex web of leather belts, cast iron pulleys, and babbitt bearings. Babbitt metal, a soft alloy of tin, copper, and antimony, is what keeps these high-speed shafts from grinding themselves into dust, but it requires constant lubrication. You realize the oiler, a kid no older than 18, who was hired at half wage, missed a grease cup. The bearing has overheated, the metal has liquefied, and the shaft is now fused to the housing. The floor manager's whistle pierces the sudden silence, a sharp metallic sound that cuts through the dying hum of the overhead shafts. He doesn't offer a word of comfort, he just points at the main drive housing. The silence is the most expensive thing in Detroit. Every minute this line is down, the company loses hundreds of dollars in lost productivity. But for you, the cost is much more personal. In 1932, many factories operated on a no-work, no-pay basis, down to the very minute. If the line doesn't move, your children don't eat tonight. You and two other men scramble toward the main assembly. This is where the angle B of your reality becomes a mechanical nightmare. The drive system is a relic of 19th century engineering, a complex web of leather belts, cast iron pulleys, and babbitt bearings. Babbitt metal, a soft alloy of tin, copper, and antimony, is what keeps these high-speed shafts from grinding themselves into dust, but it requires constant lubrication. You realize the oiler, a kid no older than 18 who was hired at half wage, missed a grease cup. The bearing has overheated, the metal has liquefied, and the shaft is now fused to the housing. With a violent crack, the fused bearing breaks loose. You quickly scrape away the charred alloy and repack the housing with fresh grease, your movements frantic. Your skin brushes against the hot shaft, but you don't even flinch. The adrenaline of the stretch-out has taken over. You signal the foreman. He nods once, a cold mechanical gesture, and throws the lever. The belts slap against the pulleys with a sound like a gunshot, and the factory roar returns. You return to your press, but the rhythm is faster now. The foreman is trying to make up for the lost 20 minutes by increasing the line speed. The afternoon becomes a blur of gray steel and rhythmic thuds. By 4 p.m., your body enters a state of industrial hypnosis. This is where the most accidents happen. You've seen it before. A man's sleeve gets caught in a gear, or a worker collapses from heat exhaustion and falls into the scrap bin. You stay focused on the gauge, 18-gauge steel. Seat the blank, clear the scrap, repeat. You start calculating your earnings again. If you finish the shift, you'll have enough for the rent and maybe, just maybe, a pound of salt pork to add some protein to the evening's potatoes. But then the announcement comes. It's not a whistle, it's a man with a megaphone standing on the loading dock. Shift ends at 5 today, no overtime, and check the board on your way out. The board is where they post the names of those who are no longer needed. In 1932, there is no human resources department. There is only a piece of paper and a line of men with their hearts in their throats. As the 5 o'clock whistle finally blows, the air in the factory changes. The heat dissipates rapidly, replaced by the damp, chilling fog of the Detroit evening. You wash your hands in a communal basin filled with gray, soapy water that smells of lye. It doesn't get the grease out, it just moves it around. You walk toward the gate, joining the throng of silent men. No one talks. Conversations are dangerous. They might be mistaken for union talk, and union talk is a one-way ticket to the permanent blacklist. You reach the board. Your eyes scan the list. The paper is damp from the fog, the ink slightly blurred. You find your number. You aren't on the list. Not today. You feel a wave of relief so sharp it almost makes you sick, but it is immediately followed by a crushing guilt. You look to your left and see Bill, the 60-year-old veteran. He is staring at the board, his shoulders slumped. His number is there. He has worked in this plant for 20 years, survived the transition from steam to electric, handled every machine they threw at him, and now, at the height of the worst economic collapse in human history, he is a discarded part. You walk out of the gate and back into the cold. The line of unemployed men is still there, though it's thinner now in the dark. They look at you as you pass, not with hatred, but with a hollow, haunting envy. You have a badge. You have another 10 hours of noise and danger waiting for you tomorrow. As you walk toward the streetcar, you pass a newsstand. The headline reads, "National unemployment reaches 25%. You realize that the factory isn't just a place of work, it's a fortress. Outside those walls, the world is falling apart. Inside, the machines keep turning, indifferent to the men they break or the lives they sustain. You board the streetcar, the iron wheels sparking against the rails, the same sound as the factory, the same sound as the machines. You close your eyes, and you can still feel the vibration of the 500-ton press in your bones. You are a factory worker in the Great Depression. You have survived another day of the machine age. But as the streetcar rattles into the dark, you know the machine is never satisfied. Tomorrow, at 6 a.m., the gate will open again, and the cycle of survival will restart. For a few dollars a week, you give the factory your sweat, your safety, and your years. And in return, the factory gives you exactly one more day of life.